Are you built to be strong? Well, you might not like this, but strength isn't fair. Some people are literally born to be strong. Longer arms, muscle insertions away from joints, short limbs, and bone structures that give them an advantage before they ever even touch a barbell. And no matter how hard you train, there will be a person out there who you cannot outlift in their first session, no matter how long you train, because you can't outlift their physics or their biomechanics. At least this is true of the vast majority of people. But that doesn't mean you can't be your version of strong. It just means that you need to understand the body that you were given. And today I'm going to answer for you if you were built to be strong through anthropometrics, the science of how your body proportions determine what you're built for. You're going to need a tape measure for this. You might need a friend for this. So save this video, share it with a friend, do it together, and you'll be able to determine if you are built to be strong. Now, anthropometrics is just a fancy word for body measurements, which is limb length, torso length, joint width, muscle insertion points, etc. And these are all factors that shape your leverage. Think of it like mechanical engineering. If your femurs are long, the lever arm is longer, which changes how much force you have to produce to move the same weight. The example that we were always given in university is if you think about pushing a door at the hinge versus you think about pushing a door halfway out the door, the different force required to perform the exact same motion is substantial. Same thing happens. Now, the simplest example we have is the bicep. If my bicep insertion is down my forearm, well, if it's close, it's like pulling the door from the hinge. Very difficult. The further out it is, the more leverage it has to be able to pull. And this happens across multiple joints for every movement. It gets very, very complicated, but we're going to simplify it today. That explanation is why two people can squat the same amount of weight, and one looks like they're sitting down forever, and then one just drops down and pops back up like there's no weight on their back at all. Of course, there are strength differences, there's motor unit recruitment, and there's a variety of skill-based attributes, but some people are just way more natural. And you're usually natural for a biomechanical reason. Now, while strong people come in all shapes and heights, there are certain principles that will remain true. For example, long arms are a superpower for deadlift and stone, so guys like Brian Shaw and Thor have that perfect combination of limb length and torso angle that helps keep the bar closer to the center of mass, keep the bar close to your center of mass, and you're going to be able to lift huge weight. But that same body with the advantage in the deadlift will make overhead presses inherently weak, and a weakness that has to be overcome. Then you've got shorter lifters with thick torsos, short limbs, who are built for squats and presses, like Zydrunas Savickas or Eddie Hall, who are compact, dense, with joint angles that make 200 kilos overhead look really balanced and easy instead of brutally difficult. This is also why you'll see some people dominate deadlifts, some people dominate overheads, and some unbeatable in carries. This is almost determined by your parents more than your training. In fact, you'll see someone who's super dominant at a particular category talk about how they train that the least because they're built to do that the best, and they train their weaknesses more often. At least that's how best athletes train. But they're not better athletes, they're just built different. They're different machines for different jobs. So I'm not going to tell you in this video that you're not strong or you are strong full stop. I'm going to give you the tools to find out if you have a specialty, if your strength will be more well balanced. Now, here's the trap that a lot of people fall into. They see someone deadlifting 800 pounds and they try to copy their setup, but their body isn't yours. Their levers, limb length, limb ratios, even muscle insertions are totally unique to you. And they're different in every area of your body. You can't force your way into someone else's biomechanics, or else you're going to be putting yourself at a disadvantage accidentally. This is why coaching is such an art, and you can give general guidelines, but in the end, people are going to find their own way to do things that feel good, and they feel good because people are strong in particular ways based on a variety of factors. Now, there are actually beneficial technique changes that you can make based on your proportions. I'm going to go over those as well. So let's talk about the three major lifts and what would make a mechanical advantage, what would make a mechanical disadvantage, and what you can do if you do have that mechanical disadvantage. Now, first up is deadlifts. This is where you're going to have to get a tape measure out, or save this part of the video, or share this to a friend, because I'm going to give all of these lengths relative to your total height. That's the only way that this can be done. So deadlifts, of course, a short torso is useful, long arms are useful, and short legs are useful. Now, how long and how short? Well, for a short torso, you're going to talk about less than 40% of your height. And your torso measured is going to be seated from the bottom of your butt to the top of your head. If that is less than 40% of your height, you are well equipped to be a great deadlifter. You're going to want long arms. Now, of course, the longer the better, but anything over 50% of your height, if you're sat with your arms straight out in front of you, and you measured from the back of your scapula all the way to the tip of your finger, greater than 50% of your height is going to be extremely useful for deadlifts. And last, short legs. Now for short legs, you want this to be less than 45% of your total height. You can do this by standing, and the sitting bones on the back of your butt, or where your butt apex is for most people, that should be less than 45% of your height if you want to be a great deadlifter. If you have a long torso or shorter arms, it's going to be an inherent disadvantage and there's no getting around it entirely. But if you adopt a more upright position, it removes that mechanical advantage. You think, we're talking about if you draw a vertical line from your shoulder down and your hip down, we want that to be as small as possible. And that's why a short torso is useful. That's why short legs are useful. But what can we do to adopt an even more upright position if we have a mechanical disadvantage? Well, we can accomplish this by either driving your knees out over the bar, making your hips go down and your torso remain a little bit more vertical off the ground, or we adopt a sumo stance, which I do not recommend at all, unless... Onto squats. Now, you're going to want a short femur and a short torso for squats. A short femur means 30% of your height. If you're seated with your legs at 90 degrees, this is the back of your butt to the front of your knee. If this is less than 30% of your total height, you're in a great spot. And short torso, like I had said before, less than 40% of your height from bottom of butt to top of head. If you think about a little person squatting, it looks so solid and compact and they're perfectly vertical, where an NBA player squatting, like this one of LeBron James, looks absolutely horrendous. This isn't because LeBron's a terrible athlete and little people are all phenomenal athletes, of course, but with a long femur and a very long torso, you will never be able to squat upright. It's just impossible. And for sport, especially basketball, there's little circumstance where your chest drops towards the floor. It's not good technique and it doesn't translate power into something like a vertical jump, so it's not useful to train. It's not a technical error, and if you want to squat to depth, you need a mandatory compensation. You're going to need to drop your chest towards the ground. So if you have a longer torso and longer femurs, well, you're naturally going to have to hinge over a bit more, and you're a type of person who would benefit massively from using a low bar position rather than a high bar position. You're also going to have to accept the difference between pointing your chest at the ground and collapsing your chest. If your upper body is stiff, your chest can point about 3 feet out in front of you if you have long femurs, and this can be a really strong position. You have to drive your knees out and think that you're squatting between your knees and almost feel like you're sitting into the top of your hamstring rather than pushing your knees forward and squatting with your quads. If you're able to do this successfully, it can be an incredibly useful tool to overcome that long femur. But you will never be as good or as natural as squatting as someone with a short femur. This is borne out time and time again. You will never see an elite world record holding powerlifter with a long femur, but you can be a strong squatter for you. For bench press, you're going to want your humerus to be less than 19% of your height. You can measure this by sitting in your chair, holding your elbow at 90 degrees and measuring from the bottom of your elbow to the top of your shoulder. The landmark there is your AC joint, that bony part at the top of your shoulder. If you have a long humerus, this just means that, well, you're going to be at a disadvantage. You're going to want really, really strong triceps, and you're going to disproportionately focus on those. And if you go wider, flare your chest, and try to have a shorter range of motion, that's going to be more useful for you. Now, if you notice something about all of those proportions, short and stout is usually better. This is twofold. Both for mechanical advantage, because shorter limb lengths give you a natural increased ability to move the weight, but also because shorter limbs also produce thicker muscles. It's interesting that muscle weight is not the primary determinant of how much weight it can move, but muscle thickness is. This is called the cross-sectional area, and these two reasons are why powerlifters are often short and bulky. You want thick muscles and short bones, and you will be able to lift huge weight. Now, this begs the question, why are strongmen usually taller than Thor, the greatest deadlifter of all time? He's deadlifted 510 kilos as a 6'8" man. So why are strongmen usually taller? Well, first of all, we're talking about relative lengths. You can think Thor could do all of those metrics in percentage of his height, but it's also because of the constraints around the sport. We've heights of stone platforms, for example, but their proportions to thrive don't change. Like I said, you can be 6'8" with relatively short legs, of course, for someone who is 6'8". So are you built to be strong? Back to the original question. Well, maybe not like the guy next to you, but that doesn't really matter. Strength is relative to your architecture. And this is why I'm actually pretty soft on setting long-term goals, because your goal shouldn't be to fight your structure. It should be to optimize it. And if your structure isn't designed to be the world's strongest man, you don't have the right limb lengths, you don't have the right muscle insertions, it's never gonna happen. And I talk all the time how lucky I am to be in the position I am to be world's strongest man. And I'm lucky because of those reasons. Not because I don't work hard, not because I'm not disciplined with my diet or training or recovery, or I've worked for it, but my parents did the work first. That's a disturbing way to say it, but you know what I mean. Thanks, mom and dad. You train for your levers. You do not train against them, because the strongest athletes in the world, they're not built perfectly. And I'm not built perfectly. They just learned how to turn their imperfections into their powers. They obsessed over their weaknesses. I'm lucky to really have no big natural weakness, but someone like Thor, his static strength was not his strength at the beginning, but he trained his way into it over several years. So no, strength isn't fair, but it is earned. And once you understand how you're built, you'll realize you're not really at a disadvantage. You might just be playing the wrong game of physics. I hope this helped you guys. If you want some more exercise modifications, head over to the members section where I have up to 100 hours of educational content diving into it in a lot more detail. Thank you very much for watching. Until tomorrow, lift heavy, be kind. Pop a comment down below and leave a moose dropping down there if you have nothing else to say. And until tomorrow, lift heavy and be kind.